So again, the whole preface of a wave reversal. So if you're looking at this uptrend on the 4-hour, number one, there's a few things that are specific to this. I know we're having the general question of if price breaks the wave to the downside or to the upside and the CCI is not confirming, does that mean it's a rejection and then ultimately it's going to continue in the direction it was going in? So in this case, we have an uptrend, wave reversal. Would we short this? Well, I have to backtrack just a little bit because I can't take the short on a 4-hour to begin with, right? A 4-hour is a longer term commitment, and when I have directional bias showing me bullishness on the daily, which is what we have, I can't do anything but buy on the 4-hour. So our time frame guidelines, our directional bias time frame guidelines are going to prevent any kind of short on the 4-hour and even possibly the 1-hour to begin with. So based upon this time frame, okay, not the setup itself, but the time frame triggering a short, that's a no-go. All right? However, let's take a look at the bigger question that's been asked, which is, what if we get the break of the wave, we look down to the CCI, and it's not confirming? Would that then mean the trend is going to head back up? Well, here's the thing when it comes to wave reversals. What you ultimately have is a transition, correct? We're looking at a transitional market. So if we're actually looking at a transitional market, it's vulnerable, right? It's a market that's very vulnerable. So what we could look at instead of the CCI is the stochastic. Because ultimately, if we're kind of talking about a fade, or if we're talking about a situation where the market's in transition and we could see overbought or oversold dominate the psychology and the price movement, then the CCI would kind of fade to the background and you'd go into a stochastic situation where you ask yourself, is this down here then oversold? Is this an oversold area as we're moving down lower? So if you are thinking, well, I'm getting a wave reversal, I can't take it because of the time frame, or I can't take it because of the CCI reading. And again, this is more about the question than it is actually what I'm seeing, because perhaps, again, this is a 4-hour candle, so we're seeing the end result of the CCI reading as it plots after 240 minutes. Now, 30 minutes in, we may not have had the CCI below the negative 100. Okay, so remember that. We're seeing it as it looks like at the closing point. So if you're noticing that it's not triggering, look to the stochastic and ask yourself, well, I am in a 2 to 4 because the process of rolling over does leave us with a vulnerable, brief 2 to 4. And if you add the specific situation of the Euro-US, you really can't short this anyways. So it might be more applicable to say this 15-minute time frame where you ask yourself, can I take a rollover here? Or more recently, the 30-minute where you ask yourself, can I take a rollover here? And again, some of the preliminary questions would come in. Would I have been swing trading this angle that preceded the rollover? If I'm not willing to swing trade it, I certainly can't play the wave reversal. If this angle isn't on par with the sell-offs and rallies that are within the market memory, again, it's not eligible for a wave reversal. So this one was probably iffy to begin with. Okay, even though it looks great falling to the downside, this was probably iffy here to begin with. So when I drop a vertical line here on the actual breaking candle, which is right there, we had the 100 CCI. I don't think that's an issue. So it's a 30-minute, it's short-term time frame enough where I would be willing to say, yes, this is a counter-trend trade, but it's a short-term nimble. I'm not really looking for anything, say, below 3,500 or even much below 3,480. So it's a short-term trade. Okay, but the bigger question here is the validity of even thinking about this trade right here to begin with, when in fact it's probably arguable that this was not a great swing environment. Again, if you weren't willing to swing trade this, you can't wave reversal. Look at this previous trend here. Look at this previous trend here. Again, this was probably a smaller the smallest of any of the trends on this chart to begin with. Do you see that? Does that make sense? So I know it's a bigger question. So that's the situation there. And the Euro-US is something we want to dive into, so let's go ahead and get into that. We'll switch reels and start talking about the power stats and what today's weakness here for the 6th means to the overall trading range. And then, of course, our management of the Euro-US position that we still have on the books here.